Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I'm honored to introduce Senate Bill 478 on behalf of Oregon families. This common sense bill will help protect Oregon's children from exposure to dangerous chemicals linked to serious disorders and chronic diseases. Research has shown that dangerous toxins, including arsenic, mercury, formaldehyde, phthalates, and BPA, are present in children's products and show up in children's bodies, human cord blood, breast milk, urine, and other bodily tissues. Toxic chemicals have been linked to cancer, asthma, Parkinson's disease, infertility, genetic damage, fetal and child development, learning disabilities, liver toxicity, and diabetes. Pediatricians are now diagnosing children as young as 5 with diabetes because hormone disruption is speeding up the development of this disease. And this is a huge epidemic in Oregon, as it is across the country. The cost of environmentally attributable childhood diseases and disabilities in Oregon is estimated at $1 billion a year. Oregon is transforming our healthcare system to improve coordinated care with a special focus on better managing chronic diseases. We're linking our healthcare systems to early childhood hubs and K-12 to better support children who experience health challenges, learning disabilities, ADD, and autism. But in addition to coordinating our health, education, and human services for those who most need it, we must do all we can to prevent the occurrence of chronic diseases and disorders. And part of that effort must include reducing our children's exposure to toxic chemicals. Unfortunately, we have had little help at the federal level in regulating toxics in children's products. While the federal government regulates products, such as car seats for crash safety, many people are shocked to learn that companies are not currently required to disclose the presence of toxic chemicals in their products. Oregon parents don't know whether the teething ring they give their infant, the rubber ducky they put in their toddler's bath, or even the car seat they use to keep their newborn safe contains chemicals that could make them sick. Senate Bill 478 will help protect our kids' health through the following steps. By January 1st, 2016, OHA will establish a science-based list of high-priority chemicals that pose the biggest threat to children's health. The 66 chemicals on this list are the same ones as in the Washington law and include heavy metals such as cadmium, arsenic, and mercury found in toys, phthalates, which are found in soft plastics and cosmetics, and formaldehyde found in diapers and fabrics. It will publish this list on its website with information about potential health impacts of exposure. By January 1st, 2018, within 2 years of the list being published, the bill requires manufacturers of children's products with gross annual worldwide sales of $5 million or more to tell the Oregon Health Authority when their children's products contain any of these dangerous chemicals. These steps mirror the bill passed by the Washington legislature with strong bipartisan support in 2008. Our bill intends to cover the same products and the same chemicals, making it easy for manufacturers to comply and allowing Oregon to build on the rulemaking and implementation in Washington. The main difference between our disclosure and Washington's is that Senate Bill 478 exempts manufacturers with global sales under $5 million a year, whereas Washington's disclosure requirements apply to manufacturers of any size. By January 1st, 2022, which is within 6 years of the list being published, or approximately 6.5 years from now, Senate Bill 478 requires these manufacturers to phase out these toxins in products where the greatest exposure and harm can occur. That is, products that are intended to go in the mouth, products that go on the skin or on the hair, and products that are intended for children under 3 years of age. Manufacturers can apply for a waiver if they can show that children are not exposed to the chemical in the product, or if there are no technically or economically feasible alternatives on the market. The point of the bill is that if there are safer alternatives to toxic chemicals, large manufacturers should replace them. And we give them over 6 years to do so. This bill is not only good for kids, it is also good for Oregon's economy. First, it will help Oregon's emerging green chemistry entrepreneurs by encouraging innovation among manufacturers, including our own homegrown ones, who sell to businesses in Oregon. Oregon universities and entrepreneurs are leading research and development of new, safer alternatives to replace chemicals of concern. A joint OSU-U of O center received $20 million in federal funding for commercialization of innovative, safer chemicals for use by key industries in Oregon and beyond. Once they develop safer alternatives, manufacturers should use them. Second, the bill will help local retailers have confidence in the safety of the products they sell and may even increase their sales in other states where consumers hear about the steps Oregon has taken to protect children's safety. Senate Bill 478 uses state resources efficiently by providing clear authority and a streamlined process to track chemicals of concern. Clear guidelines and promoting safer alternatives through the hazard assessment will combat these dangers more efficiently than addressing emerging risks one at a time. The bill does not regulate chemicals in products like food and beverages that are already regulated by the federal government. In addition, food and beverage packaging is exempt from this bill. While the federal government recognizes the need for greater protection from hazardous chemicals in children's products, it has been slow to pass and implement laws. If and when Congress does pass an updated and more effective Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, it will preempt state regulation over chemicals in those products. We cannot wait for the federal government to take action to protect Oregon's children. Like Washington, Vermont, Maine, and California, we must act to protect the children in our state. This bill makes sense for Oregon's businesses, Oregon's parents, and most importantly, Oregon's children. We have the scientific knowledge to know which chemicals are dangerous and the responsibility to protect our children from them. Senate Bill 478 enables us to do just that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. We had a new rule yesterday that we addressed the presiding officer, but after 4 sessions of working on this bill, I'd really like to address you directly. There are a lot of things I could say about content. There are sometimes misperceptions that are out there, including the letter to the Oregonian, the editorial comment this morning from a retired physician who talked about why it was not good to have a labeling bill, and that was kind of confusing because there's no labeling in this bill at all. So there's a lot of misperceptions out there. I could talk a lot about content. I really appreciate the very vigorous debate here on the floor about the content itself. I do want to reiterate before I move on from content that the bill says that if there's a safer alternative, then you need to use it. And so in the instance that had been brought up about a car seat keeping kids safe, and wouldn't that be horrible to not be able to use a car seat to keep them safe? If there's not a safer alternative that can provide the same kind of function, that's a safer chemical out there, it's technically feasible, economically feasible to use, then manufacturers may still continue to sell a product. They just disclose that there's a toxic chemical in it. So any kind of discussion about, oh no, we're banning products and we might need those products, this is not a ban on products. This is if there's a safer alternative, it's technically feasible, provides the same kind of function. If it's in switching out phthalates because they make plastic soft and there's other ways you can do it. Switching out toluene, that certain companies are now reporting they have toluene as a toxic solvent in their underwear, being reported in Washington. Other companies are not using toluene in their underwear, then it's not that hard to switch. So if there's if there's one thing that you can take away from this bill, it's that if there's a safer alternative, it's technically and economically feasible, then companies should do it. That is the bottom line on this bill, colleagues. And I just want to say something about process here. From the very beginning, I've worked very closely with the Oregon Environmental Council, which has a bipartisan board and really tries to take into account how can we build a sustainable economy that really works with industry. That is very important to them. It was important to me in choosing a partner to work with on this. And at every step of the stage, because I care so passionately about kids and public health, and I know my limitations, I have reached out across the aisle to make sure that we involved other kinds of stakeholders who really care about the things that I know less about. And one of my biggest collaborators from early on was Representative Conger, who I got to know on the Health Committee, and whose daughter was subjected to lead when she was an infant, and it was terrifying for he and his wife, and that is why he got so passionate. He said, you know, I want regulation, but I want as little regulation as needed in order to reach our goals. And he worked and worked and worked, and many of the changes that you see in the bill before it even came here and got changed more were as a result of his incredibly good work. I really want to thank him. I had hoped we could pass this when he was still in the House. We weren't able to do it at that time, but I want just huge hats off to the enormous amount of work that he did. I do not want anyone to see this as one party had the bill and we tried to get other people on. He was instrumental in crafting it from the very beginning. One of the next people that got very involved in this was Representative Gomberg, who owns a kite shop. He makes products for children. He understands. He was one of the ones that said, what if my Chinese manufacturer tells me that there's no toxic chemicals, and then I find out there is? We made sure that there's a 90-day grace period that once you find out, then, okay, there's no fee at all. Just let us know. And hey, good for him that he can find out that his manufacturer that he was relying on actually didn't tell him the truth. There's some benefits there. And then lastly, I just want to say Senator Edwards, who has carried this on the Senate side, has done a phenomenal job. As you all know, Senator Edwards, right there, I just saw in the back of the room, is someone who I kind of jokingly called moderate when we were in a committee, and he said, oh, I've never been called that before, and I don't know if he took it as a compliment or not, but what I actually meant to say was that this is one of the people that I think you know works tremendously hard to reach across the aisle, work with industry. He is the one that really, over the last 2 years since it's been introduced in the Senate, has done all of the groundwork, the workhorse on bringing people together. And there is no doubt in my mind this bill would never be on the floor here today if it were not for his work in the Senate. So I really want to thank Senator Edwards for getting the bill this far. With that, I will close. I encourage you to think about both the process of bringing this bill here as well as the content that has been poured over by many people with many different stakeholders, and I encourage your support. Thank you.